Final countdown. Are we counting down to an explosion of independence destroying the dreams of the main two parties and leading chaos? Or are we counting down to the launch of a new and better parliament where a wider range of voices will be heard?
Well, Cathy McGowan, you've been working with independents throughout the campaign over the last 6 weeks, I guess passing on some of the secrets of your success as an independent in Parliament. Before we get to Dennis's question about whether it's going to mean chaos or a better Parliament, should we see more independents in there? What's your prediction? Are we going to see what Dennis calls an explosion of independents at this election?
So, Dennis, one of the things about the independents in their running, and there's 23 of them, most of them are running in what's called safe seats, where the margin is great to win is greater than 5% and up to 20-25%. So the chances of them are winning are way outside the odds. They're not marginal seats. So it's a really big thing to win, to get your person elected. What most of the communities are doing are trying to get better representation. They're definitely wanting to make their seats marginal. And if they can get over the line, that's a good thing. So the answer to your question, I reckon prediction-wise, I don't know anything other than what I've been reading in the papers, thanks to the papers and the polling groups, but one in Melbourne, I reckon, one in Sydney and one in Perth.
So one in Melbourne, one in Sydney being those more inner urban teal independents.
The leafy Bayside, they're all leafy Bayside ones. I think one of those will go.
Do you want to tell us which ones?
No, I don't know. But also, and I'm watching, there's a real movement in the country as well in the National Party seats. I don't know if they can actually get over the line, but there's a number of National Party seats that are going to come really close. And I think on election night, there's going to be a massive recount. And it certainly happened when I was elected. They had to go back and do the whole thing again. It came 10 days of waiting before anybody could do anything. And in the end, it was 438 votes. So it was very close.
James Paterson, I mean, Dennis asks if a vote for independence is a vote for chaos or a better parliament. What do you think?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I hope that whoever wins, whoever forms government and provides a Prime Minister is able to do so as a strong majority government and not as a weak minority government. Because I think these are very uncertain times for our country, both on the economic front and on the geopolitical front. And the last thing I think Australia needs is a government that has to bargain for its own existence every day with the crossbench, and one that has to run through really complex policy challenges with independents who all have their different pet issues and will try and bargain them down. I mean, imagine if the last election there had been a hung parliament and Scott Morrison had to negotiate the AUKUS military technology sharing relationship through the crossbench. Imagine if JobKeeper was slowed down.
Did that require legislation?
No,
Sorry.
It doesn't go through Parliament.
Well, if you're relying on those people to provide supply and confidence for your government, then I think there is a risk that major policy changes like that could remove that support for your government at any time, and it would be a brave Prime Minister to launch a major initiative without running it past independents or minor parties that they're reliant on. I mean, some of the independents, Zoe Daniel, for example, in Goldstein, has still said even today, months on, that the jury is out on AUKUS. I mean, this is one of our most transformative national security arrangements, I think, since ANZUS 71 years ago, and I think we put those things at risk. And I think JobKeeper would have been so much harder to do if, again, it had to be negotiated person by person on a disparate crossbench where all have different priorities.
So you do use that chaos line. I haven't heard you use that line, but your colleagues do. You do believe a vote for independence is chaos?
Well, I think it's a vote for a weaker government and a weaker country, and I think it will lead to uncertainty. And I think in uncertain times, that's the last thing we need. I want a strong majority government. I mean, obviously, I prefer it to be a Liberal and National one, but if it's not going to be a Liberal and National one, I would rather it be a Labor one than have a weak hung parliament.
So you'd rather a Labor government than a minority Liberal government?
Oh, David, of course I would always prefer that we continue to be in government.
No, you just said you'd prefer, I just want to be clear on this, you'd prefer a majority Labor government than to be in a minority government.
No, I'm saying that I want a strong parliament that has a majority government of either persuasion. I think that is better than a hung parliament. I think there are very real risks to our country.
So, ipso facto, you are saying you'd rather have a majority Labor government than be in minority.
David, I hear you saying. What I'm saying
I'm just checking what you just said.
What I'm saying is, of course I want Scott Morrison to continue to be Prime Minister. Of course I want the Liberal National Party to continue to be in government. But I would much rather be in a majority government. And if Labor is successful, if they do provide the Prime Minister, I would rather that they're able to do so in their own right, rather than relying on the crossbenches.
Cathy McGowan, I'll just get you to respond to what we just said.
So just let me just give a quick response to that. Now, I just want you to remember, and many of you will, August 2018, when there was one of the most unseemly fights that I have ever been part of, when the Prime Minister, strong Prime Minister doing his job, Malcolm Turnbull, was attacked from the rear by Peter Dutton, said, I want to be Prime Minister, and his ego came out and he had a massive, I'm the one to win. And then coming up from the side was Scott Morrison, who said, no, none of you guys, it's me. If ever we've had chaos in government, it was that week, when those egos, and I'm not even talking about the Senate, that's just the House of Reps. Those egos were like balls in China shots. There was chaos. The phones were ringing hot. Everyone was saying, Cathy, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Andrew Walkie, Rebecca Sharkey and I, we held Australia together in that chaos. It wasn't Labor. It wasn't the Liberal Party. It was the three of us talking to everybody. Calm down, blokes. It's okay. It's not going to go. You're in safe hands here. It was so bad that people like Julia Banks left the party in disgust. Other members of the Senate, women members of the Senate, got up and said, it's never been this bad. Now, that all got dampered down. Now, I don't think we were chaotic. I'll leave it up to the rest of Australians to think about that. But there's just one more example I just want to place on the table. Before you were there, Senator Paterson, 2017. Do you remember Section 44, when the dual citizenship happened? The Deputy Prime Minister had to go back to his seat. All those senators had to leave. The President of the Senate had to resign. Who held the government of Australia in safe hands then? It wasn't the Liberal Party. It wasn't the Labor Party. It was the crossbench.
David, just quickly on that.
I just want to go to some other panellists here for a moment. Peter, going back a little further than those examples, we did have a hung parliament after the 2010 election. This was the minority Gillard government. Now, there are very mixed views on whether that was chaotic or a great period of cooperation, collaboration and passing legislation. What's your memories of that time?
Well, the source of instability and chaos with that minority federal government in Australia wasn't the crossbenchers, it was the Labor Party itself, the Labor government itself, which then threw itself once again into another one of those frenzies of self-indulgence. It's my turn to be leader. So the situation that Cathy, you've just reminded us of the Liberal Party leadership churn. Well, remember, Labor did it too. This was a very peculiar syndrome that both parties went through. And, James is from the Liberal Party. The Liberal Premier in New South Wales has a different view to James's view. Dominic Perrottet says that he works every day, he's got a minority government. He says that having to rely on a crossbench has actually made his government better because they have to work issues through. They can't just assume that they're going to have a majority on every vote.
Well, Josh, what's your concerns, if you do have them, about the prospect, the possibility of being in a minority government? Does it worry you as much as it would worry James Paterson?
Well, it sounds like James might be voting for me, which is exciting. But, but Dennis, I'd go back to Dennis's question, and I'd say this, Dennis. I've spent the last 2 weeks on pre-poll, and I'm pretty knackered. But it's a beautiful thing seeing democracy unfold. It's a beautiful thing seeing people from the left of politics to the right of politics, and some quirky characters in the middle, all coming together and standing on a street and putting forward their ideas about what's the best thing for our country. And I hope that we're successful, and I hope that we have a chance to form government. But I think that diversity in democracy is a good thing. The other thing I would say about the independent movement, Dennis, is that I think one of the things that's really lacking in politics right now is a sense of trust in politics and a sense of trust in our political leadership. And I think one of the most profound things that a politician can do right now is be a part of the establishment of a strong, independent anti-corruption commission. I think that will leave our parliament in a better place than we found it. So great question, Dennis.
I'm not sure if we're going to answer, though, to the question about whether you're worried. Would you be concerned about being in a government?
I'm worried anyway, David. It's 2 days before an election, and of course I'm nervous about the state of the country. I'm nervous that Morrison can win, and I think that it's entirely possible. We've been here in 2019 where everyone sort of assumed that the Labor Party was going to win the election, and that's what I'm nervous about. But no, I think no matter which party forms government, no one's going to control the Senate, and Yeah, I think one of the strengths of Anthony Albanese was that he did negotiate with people to get forward legislation during the Gillard government.
Doesn't worry.
No, I'm relaxed about it.
Well, Gigi, what about you? What's your view on independents and their role in Parliament?
Well, I wouldn't just say independents are potentially important this election, but anybody who's not one of the major parties. And the reason is I very much agree with the blokes on either side that diversity is a source of strength in a democracy. And we've seen that in the most recent historical example of the last couple of years, when we've seen the most catastrophic betrayal of the Australian people in terms of poor health policy management that I've ever seen in Australia. I think that we've seen for a generation, and we're going to be carrying the cost of that for a generation. And that's down to both major parties and their supporters, the Greens and the Nationals. Sorry, gentlemen. And so I think that, the obvious thing to do is to put everybody else first and the two majors and two supporting people last on the ballot, because Saturday is the Australian people's opportunity to pay back for the betrayals of the last 2 years. And it'll be the independents and it'll be all the what we call freedom-friendly minor parties. So UAP, IMOP, Australian Federation Party, all these other ones, they've all been popping up for a very good reason, which is that people who think that a monoculture and a single way of doing things is the right approach have abused that power and have crushed people's dreams in this country and set us back hugely that we'll be feeling for a generation.